Hello. The seasons are about to change, and so is the weather. Good news if you're after some rainfall. Looks like there'll be plenty of that in the forecast as we go into next week. Yes, Wednesday, 31st of August, is therefore the final day of meteorological summer, and it's quite apt that it's dominated by high pressure, just like most of the summer. But fast forward to the first weekend of meteorological autumn, and we have low pressure dominating. And this low isn't just coming in for one day. It's going to sit around in one form or another for several days, it looks like, bringing spells of wet and at times windy conditions as well. How do we get here? Well, let's rewind the clock back to when high pressure is controlling things. Still in control on Thursday, so for most Thursday is one final fine day. But notice there's a low down to the south. That's going to threaten some showers late in the day along the south coast. And there is this cold front moving in as well. And they kind of do a pincer movement, merge together and form this fairly static area of low pressure that's a bit like a washing machine and will just throw bands of showers across the UK during Friday and then increasingly through the weekend into the early part of next week. Why are we seeing that shift? Well, let's again rewind the clock and take a wider view and look at where the jet stream is sitting. For much of the summer, the jet stream has been up to the north. It's been in this kind of wavy, amplified pattern. And as we go through into the weekends, this arm of the jet stream drives southwards and forms this trough, which is where that low pressure kind of sits. And then the jet stream itself kind of just forms into this loop, a cut-off low, as we call it, high up in the atmosphere. And so within there, this is high up in the atmosphere where the jet stream is, but within there you just get that low pressure circulating around. There's nothing to shift it on, and it's looking like sticking around, as I said, well into next week as well. So that is why we're seeing a shift in our weather patterns over the next few days. What does all that mean? Well, as I said, most places will have a fine start to September with sunny spells and largely dry. But if you're after rainfall, well, it's looking much more promising from Friday onwards. There'll be some showers, and particularly over the weekend, some places seeing some really quite heavy and persistent rain. Something we need to keep an eye on, actually, because we have these slow-moving weather fronts moving around that area of low pressure. Some places are going to get a real soaking. Difficult at this stage to pinpoint exactly where, but this next chart does give you a flavour of the areas most at risk at this stage. This is a probabilistic forecast using the European computer model. When we run it many times, you get a probabilistic idea of the forecast. And this particular criteria picked out here is for seeing 25 millimetres of rain or more in a day. That's pretty heavy rainfall. You can see highlighting a couple of areas, one on Saturday across Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, and then on Sunday across northeastern parts of Scotland. They're the areas most at risk at this stage of seeing that heavy rain. Doesn't mean it won't rain elsewhere. It will do. There will be showers everywhere. But this is for that specific criteria, seeing more than 25 millimetres of rain in a day. And that probability there, you can see the chart along the bottom, those orange colours suggesting more than a 50% chance in these locations. So looking pretty wet for all of us into the weekend, but these two areas especially we do need to keep a close eye on. What about beyond that? Well, as I said, that low pressure system in one form or another actual low kind of joins in and just merges together and just keeps us under the influence of low pressure through Monday and Tuesday and probably beyond as well. In fact, much of next week looks like we'll continue to see bands of showers moving across the UK, as this chart shows. Now, I've changed the criteria here down to 5 millimetres of rainfall, so nothing especially heavy, but just to show the extent of rainfall. Much of the UK, quite a high probability of seeing 5 millimetres of rain or more on Monday and Tuesday. And even towards the end of next week, the signal, as we say, gets weaker because we're going further ahead. But all this adds up to what's likely to be a week of showers or longer spells of rain moving across the United Kingdom. Here's what we call the deterministic chart from the European model for Wednesday. And again, it's showing low pressure, that same kind of area of low pressure in one form or another, still just sitting to the west. Even on Wednesday, it's dominating our weather. And Thursday's chart as well still has that low close by. Admittedly, the isobars are a little further apart, so perhaps not quite as windy, but that low continuing to dominate and continuing to throw showers our way. Now, the observant amongst you may have spotted this fellow as well, which is a much more intense area of low pressure, potentially drifting up towards Spain and then maybe a little further north beyond that. But this is a long way ahead to be looking at deterministic models. I'm just showing it just to highlight that this has some tropical origin in it. Now, the Atlantic hurricane season has been remarkably quiet so far. If there aren't any named storms today, the last day of August, then it'll be the first time since '97 there haven't been any named storms in the Atlantic throughout the month of August. But things are changing in the Atlantic, and we're expecting, for one reason or another, things to get a little bit more active over the next few days. And this is the sea surface anomaly temperatures, sea surface temperature anomaly chart for the Atlantic. It's a little confusing because the reds and the blues are over the sea and the greys land. So this is North America here, the UK is up here. So this is the Atlantic, and red is sea surface temperatures above average. And in this zone here in particular, in the subtropics, temperatures are above average. And that could be a breeding ground for deep areas of low pressure that may then head our way. That's not unusual in September. This is the time of year we do start to see those happening. But with these sea surface temperatures above average, it means it's a little more likely than usual. So that is twofold. It means one thing we need to keep an eye on, certainly, as we go towards the back end of next week. And it also adds to the uncertainty in the details of the forecast as well. So make sure you stay tuned to the forecast. There's a really good explainer on how ex-hurricanes sometimes get close to the UK on YouTube that my colleague Aidan McGivern did. So go and check that out. But generally speaking, next week looks an awful lot wetter. And for day-to-day details, make sure you're following us right across social media.